All right, we're here for our Juneteenth celebration for our liberation of African Americans. It's a special day for us. It was the day that slaves were freed and Texas became a free state. I'm Joseph Lorenzo. This is
Gilva Bueno.
Makai Brown.
Mark Joseph.
all right. We're here just to inform everybody and celebrate an amazing day for us and the people in our background and our ancestors and many people who don't have a voice. All right, so my co-host Gover, he's gonna tell a little bit about what he thinks about the situation.
Yeah, so I really just wanted to start this off by asking, what does Juneteenth mean to y'all? I know for me personally, it's important just because of the liberation of all black people, but it's a continued topic, How do y'all feel about today? How do y'all feel about it back then? How do y'all feel it should look? How should it feel? How should it be towards all black people and all races? Want to start off?
Do I speak in English?
Mm-hmm.
How do I feel about Juneteenth? I feel that it's a time for Black Americans to reflect on their history, to rejoice, to be joyous, and to look towards the future. Juneteenth, what it means to me on a grander scale is that we're taking a step in the right direction. What I mean by we, I mean America, the American people. We're taking a huge step in the right direction to a more dignified society.
Mark, if you want to go.
Yeah. So to me, Juneteenth, I feel like it's a day of celebration where us black people finally got our freedom and we became free.
For me personally, it's a new start for a whole generation because of the times we live in with the police situation, with freedom, with us losing a lot of stuff financially for African Americans. This is like a new jumpstart for us just because we've been oppressed, we've been enslaved, and finally we're getting our own day to feel special, to be happy, and, to finally feel like we have something to look forward to because we've been going through so much in our time and our history. This is like, wow, this is finally for us and for the people. And this is something that our kids will never forget. And I'm glad I live in a generation where things are finally becoming a change.
Actually, I'm glad you said that about talking about future generations and, looking forward to our children and everything like that. Because I also want to ask you guys, how do you feel other races and future generations should feel towards this? Because most of us, all of us are men of color. We don't have the knowledge of other races and we don't have the background to understand how other races would feel about this. How do you think other races should celebrate Juneteenth and be a part of it and show their own support for us?
There's a famous saying along the lines of, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. With that being said, I feel that justice anywhere is a sign of optimism and a sign of hope for justice anywhere else, wherever that justice may need to be served. So as for other races outside of the Black American race, I feel that they should be able to recognize how far we have come as enslaved Black Americans or former enslaved Black Americans from our ancestors, and they should take note that if we can get justice, so can they. I feel that they should learn how to appreciate our celebration, and also know that they should be optimistic for their own future, for their own oppression to be relieved, and for their own liberation in the future.
So can you repeat the question one more time?
How do you feel other races and future generations should show their support for June 19th?
So June 19th, I don't think is very well known enough, but I feel like it should be Black History Month. We should talk more about it and everybody's, because before a few months ago, I didn't really know about June 19th, and I got the opportunity to learn about it, and I'm really happy because I didn't know that the slaves was free, and just like anybody else, if you had an opportunity and you took it, you should be happy for somebody.
Me personally, it's amazing. Future generations should be happy. I'm glad my parents lived through something that we can look back to like that. Remember when June 19th became very well known? Do you remember when the Black Lives movement started to become heavy? Do you remember all the controversy that you were able to live through and all the things you went through to finally give us hope and stuff like that. Like, that's just liberating for me personally. And then you also have like other races, you know, us as African Americans, people of color, we've celebrated their holidays. We've been a part of their things, like in school, you know, when it came to like Chinese American freedom, Dominican independence, Spanish, white people, anything, Spain. We've done it. We've done projects about it. We've done, you know, books about it, pictures about it. And, you know, this is finally our turn, you know, when the day comes along and it's towards the end of the school year, like our children could be like, oh man, our day's coming up, you know, like we're going to be here, you know, we have Black History Month, but like it's just one of those days, you know, that our kids could just look forward to and be so happy and liberated. And Martin Luther King, but the stuff that happened since the beginning, how we literally had to sit there and have our ancestors, our great-great-great-grandparents with their fingers and nails bleeding, their backs whipped, how they literally built this country from the ground up and their names are unknown. And how they literally changed the course of history, how they fought in wars, how they ran away for their own safety, how they had to work jobs, minimum wage, getting paid way less than the white man, just so they could be able to start a new life and change things. Even now it's hard for us because sometimes with the color difference, they'll be like, you know, they'll look at an African American, a person of color, like, oh man, we don't know what he's gonna do. Like, this is gonna be a real change, you know? That color difference is not gonna do nothing. It's what's up here. And now that we're gonna be more educated and not have whitewashed education, just to touch up on the subject but not go deep in depth like we do with everything else, it's gonna be a big change for us, man. And I just can't wait to see future generations just live what we couldn't.
Thank you for that, Joseph. I want to say, first and foremost, I want to piggyback off what you said about us having our own textbooks, because the American education system is notorious for oftentimes fabricating the truth. And a large reason for that could be because of this history's own shame and guilt of their oppressive manners that they still carry out today. So I love the fact that you mentioned us having our own textbooks that really delve into our own history specifically for us, that will then educate the future generations of what really happened. I feel the best way to go about this is by simply telling the truth. No fabricated lies, no fallacies, just the plain, hard, cold truth. However, with that should come a sense of optimism, showing that we can move to a better future, that we can make progress into the right direction. So, thank you.
I agree with 100% with what you said, and I'd like to add on that throughout the years, things tend to get lost throughout history, and we need to educate so we remember all the pain that our fellow ancestors and whoever else had to deal with, the pain, the suffering, and we can educate ourselves and others about the opportunities that they work so hard for us to have.
Yeah, I'm happy that you guys mentioned, you know, having our own textbooks and having the opportunity to learn here, because I was actually able to go upstairs into a classroom and to see one of the textbooks that I believe would be utilized next year. And it's specifically and directly speaking on Black history. And even though I didn't get to see the curriculum and see the teachings of the textbook, the fact that there's an entire book on Black history was just amazing to me. It's not something you normally see. Something that is usually a chapter in regular textbooks is getting its own book, something that deserves it. And another question that I wanted to ask most of you, I wanted to get into, was how do you feel Juneteenth can represent unity rather than being divided, rather than having our own day? How do you feel that it can bring everyone together?
I'm going to pass you the phone back in a minute because I need you to clarify something. When you say unity, do you mean unity within the Black community or unity within from all races?
I say unity, both, basically. Unity within the Black race, just so everybody can be educated, everybody can understand, but unity within all races, so that way we don't have an issue that we've had in the past. We don't have the issues of slavery or the issues of racism coming back. That way we can end it, and end it for good.
Thank you for clarifying that. This just goes back on how we can educate the future generations for unity within the Black community, just us taking this day or as much time as we need, possibly the whole month, preferably the whole month, to just really reflect and not dwell on the past, despite how tragic and oppressive it was to us and how tragic and oppressed we are today, but just reflecting on how far we've come and how much success we have made, even the very small, minuscule steps that have been taken to progress. That's how we can continue to unify the Black community from within. As far as making sure history doesn't repeat itself, that is what us having our own textbooks, us having our own classes, that's where they come in, by no fabrications whatsoever of the truth and telling nothing but the cold-blooded, honest truth. We'll make sure that will help ensure that history does not repeat itself, and it will also allow other races to see how far we've come and to make sure they don't make the same mistakes that our oppressors have in the past.
All right, so we have special guests coming today. We have Ace coming in. He's a My Brother's Keeper. He's one of the main people that teaches us young colored men how to live our lives and change so much. We're so happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
Go if you want to ask him the question.
So before you came in, we were just discussing how Juneteenth can be a topic of unity rather than having a day individual for sole purposes of educating and supporting Black people. How can we use this day to also come together as a race of Black people and as a race of people in general?
All right. Great question. I'm really happy that you guys are having this discussion, and I'm really happy that the world is finally, remembering, this date and putting it on the pedestal the way that they have, because, I'm in my mid-30s and, never in my life has Juneteenth been a thing. So much so that I've had to educate myself recently on it. Because it, as you guys sound like you guys were alluding to, it isn't something that has been taught in schools. It's not something that's really in the textbooks. So I think that's where the process starts, is using it as an opportunity to bring awareness, right? To why this date has such an important place in history, and then realizing that it's an indication that there's a lot of our history that we all don't know. Right, because there is more history other than Juneteenth. So I think that's where it starts, right? And if everyone, not just Black and brown people, are made aware of how significant it is, then the empathy from others, can begin to increase, and that's where I feel like unity begins, is empathizing with your fellow human being.
Thank you so much for that input. Before you came, we was talking about how powerful this is. Just for the change, not our generation, but the future generation to come. When we have children, and we could tell them what we've been through, what we had to live through the suppression and stuff like that, and how we finally getting our own textbooks to just not sugarcoat it and have a certain chapter in it. We could finally tell them how us as colored people really helped build this country, help things change, and and how we had to really fight from the bottom to come to where we are now. And that's just amazing. I really thank you for coming. We have another visitor, Megan. She's a WHSAD junior. She helps a lot behind the scenes with a lot of things here, and she's going to give us her input.
Good afternoon. I think Juneteenth is very important for the Black community and just the whole world as a general, because Juneteenth is very looked upon. We have not heard about it in none of our years in schooling. This is one, until last year or maybe this year, I have never heard of Juneteenth in my life. It has never been discussed in none of my textbooks I've seen growing up, none of my textbooks I see now, not even the assignments I see in my U.S. history class. I don't even see it to this day. I feel like Juneteenth should have its own festival. You see how there's West Indian parade and this Puerto Rican Day parade. It should have something like that to celebrate, but also be memorialize the suffering that the slaves did have to suffer through back then. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, because being a person of African American and Spanish descent, having the power to go to a Puerto Rican Day parade, Dominican Day parade, I would also like to be able to celebrate, my African American side, have a day where I could go out, dress comfortable, and be with other people who are just like me, trying to celebrate their day, their independence, something that our ancestors had to carry deep in their hearts. and finally they could live at peace. Like, you know, like finally what I went through, what I had to fight for, what my great-grandfather fought for, like my children, my great-great-grandchildren are learning this. And, you know, and that's just a powerful thing that we finally can give them peace, that, you know, what they went through wasn't for nothing. What their stories that were lost in history can finally come back to the daylight, and we could just have a whole book teaching us and, you know, having unity as a human beings, because we're all, at the end of the day, we're human beings. And this is just, these holidays and things like that are just to unify us, you know, spread awareness. You know, it's a day that, you know, us African Americans and people of color have this day so we can be able to inform other people, get everybody's understanding, their sympathy. Like, you know we've been through a lot, you guys have been through a lot too, but we just been through so much that we just have so much pent up deep inside of us that this is just, you know, letting us have our peace, you know, and it's just going to help us move forward on in life. That's all we have to do is move forward and continue understanding each other, and that's how this world is going to become peaceful.
I believe what Megan said about having a festival for, you know, Juneteenth is an amazing idea. Having something that represents the celebration of the liberation that took place years ago. And I would like to pass it to Mark just to get his thoughts on it. Afterwards, I do have another question before Megan leaves, or if she decides to stay with us. It's more of a question on your feelings individually, your perspective. But before I do that, I would like to get Mark's thoughts on just unity for both our race and all people.
So talking about unity, you can't just bring everybody together and expect everybody to like each other. The way we compromise is we understand each other's pain. We understand what others have been through, and we sympathize, like Joseph said, we sympathize with each other, and we come together to not make anything worse, just come back for the greater good.
Mm-hmm. So, Megan, I want to ask from the female perspective, how do you feel Juneteenth should be represented, and how do you feel like it would impact Black women?
I feel like Juneteenth would be like a good celebration for not only Black women and also Black men, just Black people in general. But I feel like even though Black men and Black women got treated terribly, Black women even suffered even most, because no matter how darker you are, it's like you get treated with more disrespect than the lighter people who are lighter than you. And like they deserve all the praise that they get, darker skinned women, because even though colorism is still a thing, and it was a thing now, it still connects to Juneteenth, because like darker slaves would have to go outside in the fields, and then like light skins will be in like the house basically.
Thank you for that. The female perspective is obviously incredibly important, especially with how much women had to have endured and how much they've had to go through the past, women in general.
And trying to act, African American or speak a certain way, or how people are saying, what's the big deal about the N-word, If it's just a word, then we can all say it. And that's not okay, Because at the end of the day, the word has a meaning. Certain people use it as slang, but we don't use the hard R. At the end of the day, if the hard R is something way different. We use it as slang because we're people of color. People use it at a certain time, But the fact that people are just using it as a trend to be like, I support them, I'm going to change my race to Black. I'm going to say the N-word just because I feel like we're all equal. If we're all equal, then really could say that. Then it was like, but you using the word and don't know anything. Like you see posts on social media that people are trying to say the word or saying they're transracial, and they'll ask them questions like, but what do you know about the history of this, that, and the third? And they'll be like, but I support Black people though. It's like, if you don't know, then don't try to impact. Thank you.
Yes, that was some strong words. I do believe that Megan had a thought earlier in your...
He said exactly.
Mark, do you have any thoughts?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up.
Well, before we close off, I would like to hear some optimism, some thoughts for our future. How do you guys feel Juneteenth will carry on, and how do you feel that the pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of connection will carry on for all of our people?
So I first just want to say that with Juneteenth, I feel comes a lot of reflection, especially for people a part of the Black community. And one way that I've been reflecting is just by educating myself. Knowledge is key in all aspects of life. So I've been educating myself on this topic, on my people's liberation. And because of that, that leads me to have an immense optimism in life for not just the liberation and true freedom and true equality for Black people, but of people for all races as well. So that helps me be optimistic about our future, about our future generations, and the world, and what the world will look like once we all perish.
I agree with Makai a lot, actually. My hope for the future is that like some things that seem unprofessional in the Black community, like our hair, like dreads or waves, will be deemed professional, because at the end of the day, you can see some white people with messy buns going to work and it's literally nothing to them, even though our hair is more kept and clean. I hope that education is the future. More young Black people go to college and at least finish high school or go to trade school and can actually have a job and a life and a stable future for themselves. I just hope that like police brutality like increases. It takes a while, honestly, because it's been there so long. But eventually, I hope we can get there. That there's no police brutality. That no young Black men have to worry about running in the street with like a toy and they might get shot for it.
Yeah, I feel like personally, you're all right. You know, for me, the hopes of the future is I've seen a lot and I've seen people go through other things. And, you know, I hope for the future we have more of an understanding community, you know what I'm saying? Because if it's so easy for us to understand other people, you know, and support them, I just wish it could be like that with everything. You know, with Black people, every race, because it should be an understanding platform. If you think about it, most of the conflicts we have in this world today is because of the lack of communication, the lack of understanding, the lack of trying to put themselves out there. Like, you know, J. Cole made a song recently, Pride is the Devil. And if you think about it, all these people, these countries, these governments, their pride is what's keeping us from having true peace. Just because they're like, oh, you know, if we do this one thing, then this person's going to be unhappy, even though we know this is right. Like, if, let's say, this little kid took a toy from this kid, but he's having so much fun, but you know it belongs to him. And that kid's just going to walk away with it. Like, but he's happy, but it belongs to him, and this is what's right. You know, that's where our government has to really stop. They have to take away the pride and be more sympathetic, be more understanding. You know what's the difference between right and wrong. Just because this is going to give you money and this is what's right, you shouldn't take the money over what's right. And that's what's really going to change us, you know? Understanding, decrease in pride, you know? If you see in our generation now, like, everybody just is following trends, you know? Like, we're being toxic, and now toxicity is something that's to be okay about, like hurting somebody else's feelings because you're not understanding what they're going through and you're only worried about what you're going through is a trend. That shouldn't be okay. You know, acting a certain way, like, oh, Gilbert's wearing a hat, you're wearing a hat, you know? Because like now hats are like a big trend. I want to be different. I don't wear a hat. I keep my hair out. You know, I have to understand. Maybe he's wearing a hat because that's how he feels comfortable. That's who he is, and that's how the world should be now. Understanding and take away your pride. You know, we should all we should come in arms and just be like, you know, I'm happy with things are. Hey, if you're going through this, just talk to me. We could do things differently. Thank you for tuning in. You know, tomorrow we're gonna have a part 2. We're gonna continue this conversation because, you know, like we said, this shouldn't be a one-day conversation. We have so much more to say. Have more people coming, and we appreciate you coming in. You know, June 19th is something that we should remember, something we should celebrate, something that should be leading to the change of this world and this generation. You know, so thank you guys for coming out. You know, we would all like to thank you. And see you tomorrow.